So in the last 24 hours here in Kenya, we have recorded 18 new cases, bringing the total to 1,109. But on the positive side as well, let me insist that also yesterday, in the last 24 hours, we've also discharged 9 people, bringing the total of those who have been discharged in Kenya to 375. Experts are saying that we're going to hit our peak around August, September. But right now, we want to still speak about COVID-19, but from a very fresh perspective, more of a positive perspective. And Billian, Ojiwa and Mbugua will be helping us to have this conversation. So joining us via way of Skype right now is Mbugua, a journalist, like I mentioned to you, and an author, and of course a big advocate when it comes to mental health and girls. Janet, thank you so much for making time on this Friday morning to come out and take time to be to speak to us.
When you said 6:30 a.m., I thought, okay, right, let's do this.
I know, right? Here's the thing, Janet. Maybe 1 or 2 Kenyans might not know what it is that you're doing. Could you tell us what it is that you've been doing for the past few weeks and why you're doing it?
Yeah, thank you, Zinzi. So I'm the founder of the Nuadada Foundation, which essentially provides access for menstrual products to girls and women, particularly sanitary pads. And over the last few weeks, what my organization has been doing is trying to reach as many girls and women because a lot of them, their moms or they themselves have lost out on job opportunities and therefore find themselves in a position where they're unable to access these products. Providing what I'm calling period kits, which basically has sanitary pads, panty, a mask, and some soap or sanitizer. Just a period kit to keep you hygienic and make sure that you can manage your periods during this pandemic. The moment it was declared a pandemic and the curfew came in, I started getting the calls immediately, like, what are we going to do? Our girls are going to run out of pads. And 2 weeks in, it had already begun. So we've been doing that over the last few weeks. We've reached over 1,000 girls and women, and we'll continue to in Eldoret, in Nakuru, in Nairobi. We're just trying to amp up as much as we can with support from the public, which has been incredible. So that's what we've been doing, and some food packages for families that have foodstuffs and etc.
And you know, Janet, that's the thing. I was just going to ask you that. Could you just give us a sneak peek into your inbox right now? It's no stranger that you are definitely a media personalities. Women and girls sort of feel comfortable talking to you. Could you just give us a sneak peek into your DMs, into your inboxes? What have you been seeing? What are you hearing from girls and women during this COVID-19? Before we can even get into the other nitty-gritties of why philanthropy is important.
Yeah, it's been really hard, Zinzi. I think I very early on started getting DMs that ranged from, hi, Janet, I'm a young mom. I don't have anything for my baby and I have a 9-month-old. Could you help me? And so it's hard sometimes to help on an individual basis because then you get so many of them. But it really tugged my heart, some of those ones. So then we tried to get her diapers and formula, etc. To somebody else saying, I'm in an abusive home and I need to leave and I don't know what to do. And so trying to make sure that we're able to link people like that to agencies that can help them or organizations that can help them. So those are the kind of DMs we've been getting. And the moment I started talking about the work we're doing and saying, hey, could you help us raise funds for girls and women to access period products, then the DMs really started coming in terms of, you know, my cousin is being forced to have, you know, sex for pads. Could you please help us?
Yeah.
You know, I'm afraid for my young cousin. Her family wants to marry her off because they don't have the financing right now to look after her. So it started opening it up to a broader range of issues based on the fact that they are unable to be taken care of right now because their mom isn't, you know, washing clothes during the week like she used to, or the dad isn't working. So those are the kind of range of issues I've been getting. It's a lot to do with, it stems from poverty. And then from there, it's a lot to do with assault. They're being compromised and forced to do things to look after themselves.
So here's the thing, Janet. I wouldn't be doing justice to this question if I didn't ask you about the boy child. Because here in the newsroom, majority of the stories we are getting, just recently, a few days ago, we saw a man who was burnt by his partner. So I would be lying if I said that we are not hearing these stories of also violence that men or boys are also facing during this time. It may be fewer than the women in terms of numbers, but are you also hearing anything on that forefront? Are 1 or 2 men reaching out?
I haven't necessarily had them reach out directly, but because I have a lot of male colleagues in this industry,
yes,
and because I watch the news and I see these stories, I'm aware that there are, you know, issues of violence also against men. And this is the thing, Zinzi, about what's happening now. This pandemic is affecting every single person, man, woman, child. And we can't ignore that. And so it's not about categorizing whose issue is worse than the other when it comes to advocacy. I think it's important that we're speaking for everyone and trying to make sure everyone is safe. Everyone has access to their rights, to, whether it's healthcare, some of the bigger issues that we need to address as a country. And so even when it comes to violence and poverty, it's important that men are also protected. It's important that they're not seen as a secondary issue in this. It's just that, unfortunately, what we've seen in previous epidemics or pandemics, if I'm to give Ebola as an example, is that because I spoke to somebody who was at the front line in the fight against Ebola, she said a lot of issues to do with sexual and reproductive health were deprioritized because all the focus was on how can we contain Ebola, which is obviously understandable. It's the same thing that's happening with COVID. But what happened after that is that she said suddenly there was a surge in teen pregnancies, a surge in cases of FGM, women who were not getting access to medical facilities to go for mammograms, etc. Suddenly we saw cases of breast cancer also being reported. And so they now had to address the issues that came out of that. So yes, there are issues of violence against different people. I know there was that horrendous story of a man allegedly dying, in the hands of his girlfriend, and a man who was burnt. We also need to look out for those people. We need the government to not deprioritize the issues of violence that are happening in homes because they're trying to contain this virus. We need to make sure that there is still work being done to make sure that citizens are safe, men and women and children. Orphanages should be declared essential services. Halfway houses and rescue centers should be essential services.
Wow.
People should be able to access their safety and not wait until COVID is contained, because then you're going to just give birth, so to speak, to a whole other crisis. So yeah, it's difficult to hear issues against men. Those need to be addressed. In my work, the focus, I get a lot of requests from women because of the line of work I do, but we're also looking out for families, which is also why the care packages we did, some of the focus is care packages for families, because we know there's men and boys in that home. But everybody should feel safe, Zinzi. Every man and woman and child should feel safe. And we don't have to wait until COVID is over to say, okay, let's go back and help everyone else. It has to happen now.
True. And here's the thing, Janet, one might be asking then, how are you able to fund your distribution of the care packages that you're doing? Because like you said, in this, it's not every time we live in a pandemic. So right now with the job losses, Janet, that is happening right now with the job cuts, with the economy, whether it's Kenya or globally, economically speaking, we are not in the best situation. So as a Kenyan, I would love to support Janet, but I haven't paid my own rent. As a Kenyan, I'd love to support Janet and all these other people like Billian who are doing fantastic. But am I going to pay my child's school fees first? Like, how are you able to fund such an amazing project?
That's such a good question, Zinzi. And I think the way I've been trying to put my messaging across when I'm asking for appeals is I always start by putting a disclaimer by saying, I understand that every single person is trying to first look after themselves and look after their families. And where you can, and if you can set a little bit aside to help. That's the way I've been positioning the messaging, as opposed to saying, just give, because it's understandable that people are trying to look out for themselves. But what's incredible is that there are many people who are saying, no, great, I can actually give. I'm fortunate enough to still be in a situation where, yes, I have a buffer for a couple of months. I feel like I'm able to look after myself and my family. I would love to give this amount to help other families. So honestly, my call to action is for people who can help, and not asking that every single person does so. It's a very unique situation that none of us have found ourselves in before. But we also have to understand that there are so many families struggling. And so where somebody can help and where somebody can give, please do. To my organization and to the many other organizations that are trying their best to intervene during this time, because there are so many. But my foundation has been fundraising for some time. So luckily, we have had a bit of funding, and that's what helped us put out our first batch. But then now we're getting some support from the public as well, from organizations, from companies, from the US, from Kenya. So it's incredible that people are saying we would love to do our bit. But yeah, it's hard. I mean, people don't have work. People don't know what tomorrow is going to bring. we really need to think through the kind of country that we want to have in future. We need a country that is able to say we need to cushion our citizens and make sure that we're able to give stimulus packages in future. I know it sounds like a very far off dream, but if you're looking at countries that have managed this pandemic really well, it's because they've been able to protect their citizens, make sure that they have a meal on their plate, on their table, if at the very bare minimum, that they have some kind of stipend to get them through the next few months. But if you just tell people, manage this situation, find a mask and wear it, stay home, and you're not thinking about the fact that staying home for me means I'm either going to be a victim of abuse, or I'm not going to eat for the next few days, or I have no one to turn to, then are you really looking after your citizens? And that's what I've been thinking about all the time. It really talks about leadership. We need a leadership that generally wants to look after everyone and wants to cushion everyone. So it's difficult, but I just really hope that we can all band together, those of us who can, and help families that are really struggling.
Now here's the thing, Janet. You make this look so effortlessly, the community work that you're doing. You make it look so effortlessly, but I'm sure there are challenges behind the scenes. There are fires you've had to put off. What are the biggest challenges of doing the community work you're doing? Because you see, I believe what most of us see in the public is Janet or Billian or Activist X, donating food, but we never really get to see the challenges of what that person has had to go through to make sure that this care packages can get to these people in Kibra and these people in Kawangware. What sort of challenges are you facing right now as you're trying to do what it is that you're doing?
I will say that the way I've been doing it, especially now, and the way Inuadada operates best, is we partner with organizations that are already in the community. So yes, we can support people on our own. There are individuals who Inuadada is directly working with and supporting, like a group of women who are deaf in Kibera, because people are also forgetting differently abled persons, and they're having a whole other set of challenges.
Right.
Yeah, and people, girls and women who are blind or differently abled, so they also need access. So those ones, Inuadada is working directly with these individuals. For a lot of the others, we work with organizations like Carolina for Kibera, who've been in Kibera for almost 20 years, Ghetto Classics that has been in Korogosho for years. And what happens is we then are able to partner and help even more individuals in these areas. The other reason why it's important for us to do it that way is these organizations have trusts from the community, they have been in the community longer, they have accountability, and they also have access to homes and areas that perhaps may not be as welcoming or open to just a random person showing up and saying, hey, I'm here to help you. And so we have found that that's very, very effective. And so we are partnering with these organizations. They say, look, we have about 200 girls who are in need of period kits. We have about 40 families that are in dire need of care packages that include food, etc. And so then we are able to raise funds, gather, and then go on the ground, hand over to these individuals who then are able to give to the people who need them. The challenges that we do usually face even before COVID, because I was going on a series of, I would say I was going to be going on some kind of tour this year. I was in Eldoret. We were going to Mombasa doing a book tour and going to different areas. It's because you need to first gain trust from the community. You also need to manage expectations. And so you go there and people may assume that you're coming there to rescue them or to help them for a long period of time. But you're saying, I'm here to intervene and also try and raise awareness towards the issues that you're facing. But there hasn't been a lot of hostility, to be honest, Zinzi, because I think we're working with the right people, incredible people like, Rachel Mikali, who's a fantastic advocate in her own space in Kawangware, people who the community trusts and people who we can trust to empower members of their community. I'm always a big fan of empowering people to empower their communities instead of coming in there, swooping in to be the hero of the day.
Yes.
I kind of convene, bring advocacy tools and equip people to be agents in their own communities, like the lady who is looking after women who are deaf. She taught herself sign language. She's incredible. She's just a very driven individual who felt it in her to help these women and families and men. And so she's somebody that I directly speak to and help. And I've met the women and men that she's been able to empower. And so through that, we say, I want to equip you with the tools to continue doing more in your community so that even the time I'm not able to come, you continue with the work. We provide you with some funding, with some advocacy toolkits to just be able to use to speak to these girls about menstrual health, to speak to the men about empathy.
Yes.
And then you're able to pass, that's the best way to pay it forward, is that you should empower people to carry out the work that they have been called to do in their communities. Because I can't be everywhere, but there's amazing, incredible people in different parts of this country. And so that's how we do the work, Zinzi. We work with communities. We try and give them some kind of cushioning of funding and the agency and toolkit to say, please carry this forward, and we will be checking in with you to see how it's going and what other support you need from us.
Right. Okay. Thank you so much, Janet. Now, Janet, allow me to also bring in someone who is at the forefront, just like you, Billian Ojiwa. He's a community activist, and Billian is now joining into the conversation of how we can support our communities during this corona time and how young people can become the biggest resource during a pandemic. Billian Ojiwa now joins us. Billian, thank you so much for taking time to be part of this conversation. Fantastic stuff that I must say you and your people are doing on the ground. Perhaps that's where I'd love for us to begin off from. If you could tell Kenyans what it is that you're doing and why you're doing what it is that you do.
Thank you, Zinzi, for having me. So happy to be here today, and I've been following conversation on what Janet is doing, and it makes me happy and proud as a Kenyan, as a young Kenyan. So as we started by giving water, you know, at the first phases of the coronavirus, we did not have water in Mathare, and then along the way, government came through and started giving water too. Then we went to food, because when we were giving water, people would ask us, you know, you're giving us water and we don't have anything to eat even after washing our hands. So,
right.
so we started giving food, and the first time we gave food was the way they gave in Kibra, you know, just calling people and giving them food. And then we realized that was also risking people's lives. So we developed a voucher system where we just work with community shopkeepers, we develop vouchers, we work with community health volunteers, and we give the deserving families the vouchers, and they just walk into the local shops and get food.
So, Billian, how have you known which people to help in the slums? Would you and your team go to a certain location and the people would come to you, or you'd already spotted the families and individuals in need prior?
We've been working with community health volunteers who are based in the grassroots, so they understand what is going on in different families. But at our center, which is the center point for all our operations, we have a verification center where we verify, we call those families, we ask them a few questions to get understand what they really need and if they are really from the areas. And at some point, we even get people who have been sneaked in from Nakuru, but now with the verification center, we are able to make sure that we verify. So the community health volunteers have come handy because they understand the families, they understand everybody, and that has been one of the resources that we've been using to make sure that we have the right people on board to support.
Right. And Billian, how are you able to fund the project that you're doing currently with the water and the food distribution? I'm sure it's not 2 shillings.
Yeah. We are also making masks. Also to add on that, we are making masks at our center to give to guys for free. So what we are doing when we started giving water was our personal donations. We thought our community needed that. So me and my friend Kevin, we came together and we would contribute something every day and get water. But food, we've partnered with different organizations. We have the 7th Memorial Park, we have Crime Siopoa, we have Footprints for Change, we have Kenya Unites. We've been receiving even donations from Matharians in diaspora. So we had an organized system that people trust. So we do the drive we call it Mathare Weekly Food Drive, and we have an M-Pesa and Mchanga account where people donate, and then with the team we are playing different roles. So there's an organization that receives money on behalf of all of us. There's an organization that writes reports on behalf of all of us, because we have to be accountable to the people who've donated to the drive. So that is how we have been operating. With our with our mask making at the center. Before the coronavirus, we had a program for women who are learning the tailoring. So that is the resource that we tapped into. So we just bought materials and we support them in a small way we can, and they make 200 masks per day for the people of Mathare. So basically, that is what we've been doing.
I asked you earlier, how is it that we can help people while still maintaining their dignity, whether it is from a big corporate organization or whether it is a small scale level of me helping my neighbor? How do I help with still maintaining their dignity?
I think, you know, all of us were not prepared for this. I can for sure tell that. And, you know, all of us still deserve to have dignity while we are supporting. So that is why we came up with the voucher system. You know, you don't have to see people lining up. You don't have, people doesn't have to scramble for food to show that you are helping. Yeah. So that is why we adopted our voucher system, so that all you need is to have a voucher and verify the voucher when you go to the shops. You know, it's more closer to you. And, you know, young people who are also suffering from this, it is rare to find them also lining, pushing mothers to get food. So the best way to help also is tap into the local existing channels, structures, and make it not sure that you are helping. Let's help because we can clearly see what is happening in our communities. Let's try and help without overexposing people, overshowing what people are going through.
Right. Janet, could you touch on that as well? Just how we can go about helping men and women and girls while still maintaining their dignity.
Yeah, first of all, and thank you so much for the work you're doing. I think it's incredible. I think very much to what he said, we don't need to expose people's vulnerabilities in order to get, you know, sympathy and use it as a bait to get more help. I think where you can give people the power to uplift themselves, that's where the power really lies, in allowing them to also grow and understand how they can also power through this situation. It is such unique circumstances we all find ourselves in, and it's really not the time for rules and regulations to apply in terms of saying, oh, but we can't keep giving aid and people just need to understand how to help themselves. Now is the time for meeting people halfway, I think. Where you can, plug in and amplify. And then you don't have to expose the extreme vulnerabilities. I can't believe this is happening. Oh my gosh.
Janet.
Hang on, Zinzi, 1 second. So yeah, I think that's where the power lies.
Right. Let me give Janet time to handle that. Billian coming in. Janet said something quite important there, that it's very good to empower people, to empower their communities, so we can get rid of this mentality of Nisaidia. Could you touch on that, Billian?
Yes. I think it's very important, and I think the best example is when the Matharians in diaspora came together to support some of the drives that we are doing.
Yes.
Because they totally understand what is happening in the community, and moving forward, we are coming even with ideas of how to help post-coronavirus. How do we empower our community as local people and come up with the local solutions? You remember, you know, I talked to one of the leaders, and she was waiting for long. She's been waiting for face masks from I think, organizations that donate face masks, so that she can donate them to people. Whereas we mobilized our community tailors, and you know, we've been making over 200 masks every day.
And that's the thing, Billian. Sorry to cut you short, Billian. That's the thing. How do you balance being a community activist and someone who is doing philanthropy so well? How do you balance between doing philanthropy and perhaps encouraging a community to rely on government and rely on handouts? How do you balance that? That as much as you are helping the community, you are helping them so they can empower themselves tomorrow. Yes.
I think it's through the local organizations. You know, for the longest time, our communities such as Mathare, we've been. You would hear statements like "tunangojea serikali, tunaomba serikali," but I've seen what many young people, apart from me, many young people or many organized groups have been doing in the community without even asking or pushing the government. So I think those are good examples that we should tap into. We should we should applaud, and that is how we should work, because this is not just for Mathare or for Kibra or for informal settlements. Almost everyone is going through this. So unless we organize ourselves, then we should be prepared for the worst. If we cannot protect our local communities, then it will come a point where the need will even be more. So that is why the local organization, the local supports are more important. And anybody who wants to support should also just tap into those local channels so that it makes even works easier. Logistically, it's even cheaper to do that.
Beautiful. Janet, let me come back to you. Janet, I think I want us to not touch on parenting, given especially what has just happened. Let's just touch on parenting, Janet, if you don't mind. Parenting during this COVID-19, I think a big bravo to parents as well during this whole COVID-19. Janet, let's talk about how it's so important to perhaps take personal time during this COVID-19, whether you are the mom at home or whether you're the dad at home, or even just you on a personal basis, how it's important for parents to also take time, that it's okay as a parent to sort of lock in yourself in the bedroom for 1 hour and have time to yourself. Just touch on that, how important parenting is during this time and how you, as a parent, you can keep your head straight.
All right, thank you for that. I'd like to very quickly touch on the question that has just been answered so well, but the power is in, before I answer about myself, it's in helping mobilize, where people want to mobilize and come together in communities, is to provide that support. And like I said, I think for me, what's important is empowering people to empower themselves. And so where you have access to a platform or a profile, using that to kind of say, this is a platform, mobilize, galvanize, and find out what solutions work best for your community, and where we can plug in, we will. So that's just my answer for that. In terms of parenting and trying to keep your head straight, it's been, I think, because again, it's a pretty unique circumstance. The way things balance out usually is that, you have your little one, you go to work and you leave your child or your children with a nanny, or the other one is in school, and then you come back home early and you kind of get into mom mode or parenting mode and have supper together. And folks are used to. What's interesting now is that it's 24 hours round the clock. And in my case, for example, I've got 2 little ones. And people are afraid to say this, but it's hard. It's really hard because in as much as we're incredibly blessed to be able to spend this time with our children, and, we love them and they bring us so much joy, it also means that there's a lot less time for you to follow through with some of the things that you had in mind, whether it's projects, whether it's work. And so I know that there was a point when I was feeling really overwhelmed. And even though I have help, it doesn't mean it helps in cushioning or trying to support, but the babies want mommy, they want to be with you. And so now is when I'm trying to find a rhythm where I kind of encouraging people, if you can, maybe wake up earlier than you usually would. So in my case, that's what I do. And that becomes my me time because it's quiet. The little ones are still sleeping. I'm able to kind of it's 5 a.m., it's quiet. I can have my cup of coffee and read or meditate or watch videos, whatever it is. It just helps me get ready for the day.
And that's
because
the thing,
right
Janet.
now, and the reason why my little one chatted in is because they know at this point, I'm with mom and we're having breakfast and then we bathe and then we have homeschooling and it's never ending. You have to find a minute within that day, because what's happening is that I read somewhere that a lot of parents are starting to talk about feeling stressed and depressed because you don't have time to breathe. You don't have time to come up for air. You have to create it, whether it's late at night, really early in the morning. You need to, because if you don't, it will throw you off and then you're not the most present, healthy parent, even for your children. Right.
Janet, I was speaking to a therapist, psychologist about this, and she was saying that from most of her clients who especially face anxiety, for them this past 2-3 months, it's actually been less because the entire world has slowed down. Life has sort of slowed down, so people are sort of taking it in. You're able to process life a little bit better. Let me bring in Billian. Billian, we sort of need to close off, but before I let you go, Billian, do you think that the government has done enough? We have an entire ministry, public service, youth and gender. Do you feel that the government has done enough in tapping into perhaps their biggest resource during a pandemic, young people, the youth?
I think they haven't. I think, at first, they even blocked us from doing whatever we're doing, and we had to, behind the scene, bargain and tell them, you know, this is our collective responsibility. For us to go through this, for us to flatten the curve, we have to, all of us, bring whatever small contribution we have, and that's why we still have this opportunity. There's one thing that I want to tap into, I think, before we close. There's been no clear leadership structure from the government. You know,
right.
all of us are just moving. You know, if there was a proper plan, there's a proper strategy on how we project to deal with this, all of us would tap into that. But now, you know, we are just giving, and we as we give, we also try to secure. We don't know how long we'll be with this situation. And we also have to protect our families. So as young people, we believe the government has not really made use of us. They've been blaming us, and yet there are so many young people that are doing good. So if there was a proper strategy, all of us young people, we would tap into that, with what Janet is doing, with what Mikhail is doing, with what other young people are doing in different parts of this country. If you look now, you know, in the first stages, you know, they ask young people to step in. Right now, young people are more affected because we gave in our all, we gave in our resources. We were taking care of old people, the small that we had. So young people are now facing, you know, evictions, and the government is not doing anything to really help young people out of this. So as she was talking about, you know, post-corona hangover will even be worse, because we'll be trying to get back to the system. We've lost jobs. So I think the government needs to rethink the strategy again and tap into, right now they've been a line drawn on different people who are doing different things, so they can see how to make good use of those structures.
Right. Billian, Janet, I believe our time is up. Allow me to give you 30 seconds each as your closing comments. Janet?
Yeah, no, 100% what Billian has said. There's a leadership gap, and there needs to be a complete change. If this has not woken us up to the kind of leadership we deserve, I don't know what will. We have a few years away from an election, and we're seeing the power that young people have, and they are trying their best to intervene in their communities, to mobilize, to galvanize support, to be there for each other, and yet it still goes largely ignored. You're still looked at kijana, like, you know, you're not the one we're the one who make the rules. That all has to change. And we have to be very intentional about saying, this has to change. We have needs. We are resourceful. If you can trust us and even mainstream us into a lot of the policies that you're making, we can change this country around. And so we should not tire in terms of raising our voices, in terms of putting out good actions and asking people to come on board. That should be, going forward, that should be the one thing that we consistently do in a very powerful way. I know things are going to turn around. We just have to be very intentional about it. And support right now, please do. Whatever you can, whenever you can. We don't know when this is going to end. So many families rely on it. So let's do the best with what we have.
All right. Billian, your 30 seconds.
I think I just want to encourage young people. I just want to push young people that, you know, this is our responsibility. This is our fight. You know, the future, the 10 years, the 20 years, the 30 years belongs to us. So whatever we do, whatever measures we take now, you know, we'll either celebrate it or regret it in the future. So let's take care of our communities in a small way we can. You know, the more we come together to support the communities, the fewer weeks or months it will take us to go through this. So, but the more we sit back and watch, the longer it will take us. So it depends on all of us, our personal contribution, our personal responsibility. How collectively do we organize ourselves to make sure that our communities are safe? So before it gets to a point, I saw the government is projecting that maybe in August we'll be having 200 cases or more. Before it gets to that, because we know the communities such as Mathare and Kibra will be hard hit. And I keep telling my people that, you know, if we don't protect our people now, it will get to a point where the government will only be supplying us with body bags. So before we get to the point where government will be giving us body bags, let's protect our communities and let's be intentional about it.
Right.
Just that.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Billian. That's Billian Ojiwa. He is a community activist, and as well as Janet Mbugua, the founder of Inua Dada, just giving us a glimpse into the work that they've been doing in their own little way, how they're helping their communities during COVID-19. Now, here's the thing. 80 cases in Kenya in the last 24 hours, bringing the total to 1,109. Of course, those ones who have been discharged now coming up to 375. A bit of good news there. All right. Thank you so much, Billian and Janet.